The small survey ship Stellar Whisper drifted silently through the void, its sleek hull reflecting the distant starlight as it approached the uncharted solar system. This region of space had been overlooked for centuries, deemed unimportant by the Galactic Council's exploration committees. Captain Vorn stood on the bridge, his tall, slender frame tense with anticipation as the ship's sensors began their routine scan of the system's planets. "Captain, you should see this," Science Officer Trell called out, her four-fingered hand gesturing at the display. "The readings from the third planet are unusual." Vorn moved closer, his gray eyes narrowing as he studied the data streaming across the screen. The numbers made no sense. The gravity was crushing by galactic standards. The atmosphere contained oxygen, a highly reactive and dangerous gas. Radiation levels from the planet's star should have sterilized the surface. And yet, life signs, he asked, unable to hide his disbelief. "Not just life, sir. The biodiversity readings are off the scale," Trell replied, adjusting her instrument settings to confirm the findings. "If these readings are correct, this planet hosts millions of distinct species. That's impossible under these conditions." The bridge crew gathered around the main display as Trell projected a holographic image of the blue-green world. White clouds swirled across its surface, and vast oceans separated landmasses teeming with life signatures. "Could it be an error in our equipment?" asked Navigator Pell, his voice hushed. Trell shook her head firmly. "I've run 3 separate diagnostics. The readings are accurate. We should follow standard protocol for potential Deathworlds," Security Chief Marn suggested, her hand resting on the weapon at her hip. "Document from orbit and move on." Captain Vorn remained silent, staring at the planet with growing fascination. In all his years of exploration, he had never encountered anything like this. The Council would want more information. "We'll send down probes," he decided finally. "Remote observation only." The crew prepared 3 automated survey drones, each equipped with the most advanced sensors and protective shielding available. They watched on the main screen as the small devices descended toward the planet's surface. The first probe landed in a vast open area covered with tall green stalks. For 6 minutes, it transmitted data about the soil composition, atmospheric pressure, and surrounding flora. Then, without warning, the signal cut out. "What happened?" Vorn demanded. "Unknown, sir," Trell replied, frantically working her console. The probe was functioning perfectly and then, nothing. The second probe touched down in a region of higher elevation. It managed to send back images of creatures moving on 4 legs across an open plain before it too went silent. The third probe, programmed to observe from a higher altitude, lasted longer. It captured footage of sprawling structures built in geometric patterns, areas of land cultivated in neat rows, and most disturbing of all, bipedal beings using tools and primitive vehicles. "Intelligent life," whispered Trell, "on a Deathworld." The probe's transmission ended abruptly when something fast and explosive struck it from below. A heavy silence fell over the bridge. The implications were staggering. A species that evolved on such a hostile world would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever known. "We need to report this to the Council immediately," Vorn said, his voice steady despite his unease. Pell set course for the nearest relay station. As the Stellar Whisper pulled away from the blue planet, none of the crew realized they had just changed the course of galactic history forever. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy. Hundreds of representatives from across the known galaxy had gathered, their diverse forms filling the tiered seating that surrounded the central projection area. The emergency session had been called with minimal explanation, only that a discovery of utmost significance demanded immediate attention. Elder Droll, ancient even by his long-lived species standards, moved slowly to the center podium. His translucent skin revealed the dim pulsing of internal organs as he raised all 4 of his upper limbs for silence. "Esteemed colleagues," his voice carried through the chamber's perfect acoustics, We face a situation unprecedented in our 10,000 years of unified history. The chamber quieted as a holographic display activated, showing the blue-green planet that the Stellar Whisper had discovered. Data streams scrolled alongside the slowly rotating image. This world, designated XC217, was located in Sector 8, a region previously considered empty of habitable planets. Droll continued. The survey ship's findings were so alarming that I assembled our foremost experts for immediate analysis. Lead researcher Marrow stepped forward, her insectoid features betraying no emotion as she gestured toward the display with a chitinous appendage. The image zoomed in to show footage captured by the third probe before its destruction. What you are seeing defies conventional understanding of evolution, Miro explained. This planet has gravity 1.4 times our standard. Its atmosphere contains corrosive oxygen at levels that would poison most sentient species. Water covers 70% of the surface, liquid water, uncontained, and exposed to the air. Murmurs spread through the chamber as Miro continued. The radiation from its star should prevent complex life. Yet this world hosts millions of species. And most concerningly, she paused, clicking a control to show new footage. The images shocked the assembly into silence. They watched as creatures with razor teeth tore into other animals. Plants with defensive toxins that could kill on contact. Microscopic organisms that caused devastating diseases. Weather systems of incredible violence. Swirling vortexes of wind, searing lightning, and crushing walls of water. And the dominant species, Marrow said quietly, bringing up the final images. The bipedal creatures appeared in various settings, using tools, building structures, and most disturbingly, waging war against each other with weapons of increasing sophistication. These beings have survived and thrived in conditions that would kill any of us within minutes, she concluded. Their bodies are extraordinarily resilient, with redundant organs, rapid healing capabilities, and remarkable resistance to toxins and radiation. Elder Droll returned to the center of the chamber. We have no choice but to classify XC217 as a Deathworld, the first Category 5 ever documented, he announced gravely. A planet so inherently hostile that evolution there produces only the most aggressive, adaptable, and dangerous life forms. Representative Locks from the Commerce Guild rose from his seat. What of the sentient inhabitants? Do we initiate contact as per our charter? The question sparked immediate debate, voices rising throughout the chamber. Droll raised his limbs again for quiet. These beings evolved on a world that would instantly kill most of us. Their physical capabilities and natural aggression present unknown risks, he explained. Furthermore, their civilization shows disturbing signs of internal conflict and rapid technological advancement. After hours of heated discussion, the Council voted overwhelmingly to establish a permanent cloaked observation post near the planet, but strictly prohibited any direct contact. The motion is passed, Droll announced. Planet XC217, or Earth as its inhabitants call it, will remain under quarantine until we better understand the potential threat these humans pose to galactic stability. As the session adjourned, few could shake the feeling of dread that had settled over the chamber. Something told them this would not be the last time Earth would command their attention. The trading vessel Fortune Seeker drifted just beyond the quarantine boundary established by the Galactic Council. Captain Jack stared at the blue planet through the main viewport, his scaled fingers tapping impatiently on the command console. 50 years had passed since Earth had been designated a restricted death world, but the restriction had only fueled rumors about its valuable resources. "Are you certain about this, Captain?" asked First Mate Lara, her anxiety evident in the rapid color changes rippling across her skin. "The Council penalties for breaking quarantine are severe." "The Council penalties only matter if we get caught," Jax replied with a dismissive flick of his tail. "Think about it. A planet untouched by galactic commerce. The wealth waiting for the first traders brave enough to make contact would be astronomical." The small crew of 6 shared uneasy glances. They had followed Jax through questionable ventures before, but never a direct violation of Council quarantine. Our scans show they've developed rudimentary space travel, Engineer Krell noted. Simple chemical rockets, orbital stations, nothing interstellar. Perfect. Jack smiled, revealing rows of pointed teeth. Advanced enough to recognize superior technology, primitive enough to trade for it at tremendous profit. The decision made, they activated their cloaking field and descended through Earth's atmosphere under cover of darkness. They landed in an isolated area surrounded by tall vegetation, far from the larger human settlements their scanners had detected. By dawn, curious humans had discovered the alien vessel. Within hours, government officials arrived. Jax was surprised by how quickly the humans organized themselves. He had expected fear, perhaps worship. Instead, he found calculated interest and careful diplomacy. The humans designated a representative named Miller, who approached trade discussions with unexpected sophistication. When Jax demonstrated a simple energy cell, offering to trade several for Earth minerals, Miller asked pointed questions about its composition and function that revealed a deeper understanding of physics than expected. These creatures learned too quickly, Lyra whispered to Jax after their third meeting. There's something unnatural about their adaptability. Jax ignored her concerns. The humans had offered rare metals in quantities that would make them wealthy beyond imagination. All they needed to do was complete the exchange and depart before the observation post noticed their presence. On the fifth day, Miller arrived with a new request. We would like to send 2 of our scientists to tour your vessel. In exchange, we offer these additional platinum deposits. The quantity was too tempting to refuse. Jax agreed, but instructed his crew to secure all advanced technology beyond the basic systems they had already revealed. It was a fatal mistake. The 2 human scientists moved through the ship with intense focus, asking questions that seemed simple but probed critical systems. When they reached the engine room, one scientist suddenly produced a hidden device that emitted a high-frequency pulse, temporarily disabling the alien crew's neural implants. Alarms blared as more humans swarmed the vessel, their primitive but effective weapons overwhelming the disoriented crew. Jax regained consciousness just in time to see humans systematically removing components from key systems, documenting everything with portable imaging devices. You don't understand what you're doing, he shouted at Miller, who was supervising the operation with cold efficiency. No, Captain, Miller replied calmly. You didn't understand what you were doing when you came here. Jax managed to activate the emergency protocols, sealing critical sections of the ship. As security countermeasures engaged, most humans retreated with their stolen technology. The Fortune Seeker's damaged systems attempted an emergency launch, but the ship barely cleared the ground before losing power and crashing into the dense forest. In the burning wreckage, a mortally wounded Jax activated the distress beacon. His final conscious thought was realizing why the Galactic Council had quarantined this world. 3 months later, in hidden facilities across Earth, human scientists began successfully reverse engineering alien technology that would have taken them centuries to develop independently. The quarantine had been breached. The nightmare had begun. The observation post Silent Watcher orbited at the edge of Earth's solar system, its advanced cloaking technology making it invisible to human detection. Commander Lenz reviewed the monitoring data with growing concern. For 20 Earth years, since the Fortune Seeker incident, strange atmospheric anomalies had been detected. Energy signatures that shouldn't exist. Manufacturing emissions that suggested technological advancement far beyond expected timelines. It's probably nothing, said analyst Prell, scrolling through the latest reports. Their development is accelerating, but still within acceptable parameters for a pre-interstellar civilization. I'm not convinced, Lenz replied, her brow furrowed. The last 3 probes we sent for closer observation all malfunctioned near their larger military installations. That can't be coincidence. The Council had dismissed Lenz's concerns as paranoia. After all, developing faster-than-light travel typically took species thousands of years after discovering basic spaceflight. The humans had only reached their moon. The warning alarm shattered the quiet routine of the observation post. All screens flashed red as the sensors detected a massive energy surge from Earth. "What is that?" Lenz demanded, rushing to the main console. "Unknown, Commander," the technician replied, his hands moving frantically across the controls. "It's some kind of spatial distortion forming near their planet." They watched in stunned silence as a swirling vortex appeared in space. It stabilized into a perfect circle of shimmering energy. An artificial wormhole, a technology only the most advanced council races had mastered. "Impossible," whispered Prell. Before anyone could react further, 5 sleek vessels emerged from the wormhole. Their design was unlike anything in the Galactic database, with smooth lines and a predatory appearance that somehow reflected their Deathworld origins. "Send emergency alert to the Council now," Lenz ordered. "All data streams, maximum priority." The human ships moved with surprising grace, forming a perfect formation before accelerating away from Earth. They didn't head toward the observation post. Instead, they opened another wormhole and vanished. 3 days later, at the Galactic Council's primary trading hub in the Centauri system, normal operations were interrupted when 5 unknown vessels suddenly appeared in the busy space lanes. Traffic controllers frantically issued collision warnings as the strange ships smoothly navigated the chaos, coming to a perfect stop at the visitors' docking array. Inside the Council reception chamber, representatives from 17 species debated how to respond to this unprecedented arrival. Security forces surrounded the docking bay, weapons ready. When the airlock opened, the gathered officials fell silent. A single human walked out, wearing a simple dark uniform adorned only with a small emblem of Earth. Ambassador Gray was of average height for his species, but to the assembled aliens, he seemed imposingly solid, his movements efficient and controlled in the lower gravity. "Greetings," he said in perfect standard Galactic, a language that should have been unknown to him. "I bring regards from the United Earth government. We request formal recognition and admission to the galactic community." The chamber erupted in shocked discussions. The Council Elder Meeson approached cautiously. How did you develop wormhole technology?" he asked, mandibles clicking nervously. "Your species only achieved basic spaceflight recently." Ambassador Gray smiled slightly. "We've been aware of your observation post for 15 years. We've been aware of the wider galactic community since the unfortunate incident with the Fortune Seeker. Earth adapts quickly when necessary." The implications stunned the Council representatives. No quarantine species had ever developed interstellar capabilities independently, much less appeared unannounced at the heart of galactic civilization. After hours of heated debate, the Council reached a reluctant decision. Humans would be granted probationary status and limited access to Council space, not because they were welcomed, but because no one knew what else to do with a species that had shattered every developmental model in galactic history. As Ambassador Gray transmitted the news back to Earth, military advisors were already warning the Council, "Underestimate these Deathworlders at your peril." The diplomatic station, Harmony, orbited the neutral world of Pax, serving as the meeting point for newly admitted species to the Galactic Council. Ambassador Gray and his small human delegation had been assigned quarters in the Earth Wing, specially modified to accommodate their unique biological requirements. Higher gravity generators hummed beneath the floors. Air scrubbers added the nitrogen-oxygen mix they needed to breathe. Temperature controls maintained what other species considered an uncomfortably cold environment. Council Representative Thela watched the humans from across the dining hall, her luminous eyes narrowing with a mixture of fascination and unease. Despite 6 months of diplomatic exchange, many Council members still found the Deathworlders disturbing. "They eat actual animal tissue," whispered her aide, observing the humans consuming their specially prepared meals. "Not synthesized proteins, real dead creatures. A product of their evolution," Thela replied quietly. "Remember the briefing. Their world forced them to become omnivores." The human diplomatic team had proven surprisingly adept at interstellar politics. They listened more than they spoke, formed alliances with moderate council factions, and avoided the provocations of species who openly feared their presence. Their physical differences, however, couldn't be diplomatically negotiated away. During a cultural exchange demonstration, a human male named Rivera had casually lifted a ceremonial stone gift that would have required mechanical assistance for most species. When asked about their remarkable strength, the humans downplayed it as simply a result of evolving in higher gravity. "They're hiding something," Security Chief Barlock insisted during the private council session that evening. "Their physiological capabilities exceed even our models for Deathworld adaptations." Before the debate could continue, emergency alarms blared throughout the station. The main power grid had failed in Section 12, and life support systems were shutting down. "Evacuate all personnel," ordered Station Commander Frill. "Seal the affected sections." Council members rushed toward the emergency shuttles as the station's artificial gravity fluctuated. In the chaos, few noticed Ambassador Gray gathering his human team. "What's happening?" asked junior diplomat Vessa, her translucent tentacles coiling in distress as she struggled toward the evacuation point. "Hull breach in the lower levels," someone shouted. "Atmosphere venting into space." Thela felt the crushing pressure as emergency doors began closing throughout the station. She wouldn't reach the shuttles in time. Around her, other diplomats faced the same realization, panic spreading as the lights flickered and the air grew thin. Then she saw them, humans moving against the flow of evacuees, heading toward the damaged section. "What are they doing?" gasped Vessa. "They'll die." Without protective gear, the humans forced their way through partially sealed doors, disappearing into the darkened corridors where alarms warned of dangerous decompression. Hours later, when emergency crews finally restored partial power and reopened the sealed sections, they found an astonishing sight. 17 diplomats from various species, alive but unconscious in emergency pressure bubbles hastily created from station equipment. And the humans, covered in frost, their exposed skin blistered from radiation and vacuum exposure, still working to seal the largest breach in the hull. "Impossible," whispered Medical Officer Jens as his team treated the humans. They survived for nearly 40 minutes in conditions with almost no atmospheric pressure. Their blood should have boiled. Their lungs should have collapsed. Station logs later revealed the truth. The humans had moved through near-vacuum conditions, rigging temporary seals, and dragging injured aliens to safety. They had endured radiation levels that would kill most species instantly. All suffered severe injuries, yet all survived. In one terrible crisis, the galaxy learned what the Council had feared most. Humans hadn't merely evolved on a death world. They were the apex predators of that nightmarish environment, with biological resilience that defied galactic understanding. As Stella watched the human medical team recover with unsettling speed, she finally understood. The galaxy hadn't granted humans admission to the Council. The Deathworlders had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The emergency council session began in chaos. Representatives shouted over each other as the massive display showed another world falling to the Vex. The once beautiful colony of New Lumina was now covered in the characteristic black hive structures that marked Vex occupation. 3 major worlds lost in 2 months, announced High Commander Toril, his usually immaculate uniform now wrinkled from days without rest. "Conventional weapons have proven ineffective against their high ships. Our best estimates suggest they will reach the core worlds within 60 days. The Vex had appeared without warning from beyond the galactic rim. Their strange organic-mechanical hybrid ships moved in perfect coordination, overwhelming defensive fleets through sheer numbers and a disturbing ability to adapt to attack patterns. More terrifying were the Vex themselves, insectoid creatures that operated as a single mind, spreading across conquered worlds like a virus. The Mendari defense fleet was completely destroyed," continued Toril, showing footage of massive hide ships absorbing energy weapons and growing stronger. "They've somehow developed immunity to our standard plasma cannons." Elder Nissa, the Council's most respected voice, rose slowly from her seat. The ancient being rarely spoke, but when she did, all listened. "We have one option that remains unexplored," she said, her voice barely above a whisper yet carrying throughout the chamber. "We must request human military assistance." Stunned silence followed. In the 5 years since humans had joined the galactic community, most species had maintained a cautious distance from the Deathworlders, despite their heroics at Harmony Station. "Their military capabilities are untested in large-scale conflict," objected Representative Krell. "Precisely why the Vex might not have adapted to their methods," countered Nissa. After hours of debate, a formal request was sent to Earth. The response came within a day. Admiral Stone would lead the newly formed Human Expeditionary Force to the front lines. The Council watched with trepidation as human warships arrived at the staging area. Unlike the elegant designs of other species, human vessels were angular, bristling with weapons, and painted in dark colors that seemed to swallow light. They looked like predators. "This is our battle plan," Admiral Stone explained during the Joint Command briefing. The tall, weathered human stood before alien military leaders, pointing to a holographic display of Vex territory. "We don't try to hold the line. We take the fight directly to their core worlds." "Impossible," sputtered Commander Vex. "The environmental conditions on Vex-controlled planets are lethal. Toxic atmosphere, extreme radiation, biological contaminants." "Sounds like a typical Tuesday on Earth," interrupted Stone with a grim smile. "My soldiers are already vaccinated against the biological agents you've identified. The radiation and atmosphere are manageable." The alien commanders exchanged uneasy glances. They had forgotten what it meant to evolve on a Deathworld. 3 weeks later, the first reports from the front lines stunned the Council. Human forces had not only survived in Vex territory, but had turned the enemy's biological weapons against them. Scientists on board human vessels had analyzed the Vex hive structures and engineered targeted viruses that attacked their neural networks. "They're fighting like the Vex," whispered Representative Thela as she watched footage of human soldiers moving through environments that would kill any other Council species, adapting, evolving their tactics in real time. Most disturbing was the combat footage showing human troops in close-quarters battle. When weapons failed, they fought with primitive blades or even bare hands, displaying strength and violence that horrified the watching Council members. After only 2 months, Admiral Stone's fleet reached the Vex homeworld. What happened there was classified by mutual agreement, but the outcome was clear. The Vex threat ended completely. As the human fleet returned victorious, the Council faced an uncomfortable truth. They had feared the humans might be dangerous. They now realized that the galaxy's salvation had come from its most terrifying species. The Council quietly upgraded Earth's classification from Deathworld to something new: Apex Threat World. The humans were not to be informed. The Grand Council chamber looked different now. Where once the circular tiers had arranged all species equally, a new section stood prominent: the Earth Alliance block, with its distinctive blue-green banners and stronger gravity supports. 10 years after the Vex War, the political landscape of the galaxy had transformed completely. Elder Nissa walked slowly through the garden terrace overlooking the vast spaceport of Central Station. Beside her moved the human Ambassador Reed, who had replaced Gray after his return to Earth to serve in their government. "Your colonies have expanded rapidly," Nissa observed, watching a massive human transport ship dock in the distance. 27 worlds in a decade is unprecedented." Reed nodded, his weathered face solemn. "Environments that challenge other species feel like home to us. The radiation belt of Titan's Reach, the high-pressure atmosphere of New Montana. These are mild compared to places on Earth." Nissa's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, her species equivalent of a contemplative sigh. "The Council meets tomorrow to vote on your proposal for the Joint Defense Initiative. Many are concerned about placing human commanders in charge of mixed-species battle groups." Reed finished for her. He stopped walking and turned to face the ancient alien directly. "The Vex weren't the only threat out there. We both know this. Below them, on the main concourse, A group of young Mendari approached a human military officer with tentative gestures of respect. Since humans had saved their homeworld from the Vex, the Mendari had become Earth's most loyal allies. Similar scenes played out across the station, some species drawing closer to humans while others maintained a deliberate distance. "The galaxy is dividing," Nissa said quietly. "Those who embrace your protection and those who fear it." In the decades since the war, humans had shared some technologies while keeping others secret. They had established trade agreements heavily favoring their allies. Their military vessels now patrolled trade routes once secured by Council forces, not through conquest, but through the subtle power of being essential and terrifying. "The Council has created a new classification," Nissa continued, her voice dropping further. "I should not tell you this, but I believe in honesty between friends. You are now categorized as a guardian species, evolved in conditions so extreme that you possess both unprecedented capacity for violence and, surprisingly, compassion." Reed's expression remained neutral, though a slight smile touched his eyes. "We've known about the classification for some time, Elder. Our intelligence network is quite thorough." This revelation didn't surprise Nissa. Humans had consistently shown abilities beyond Council predictions. "Tomorrow's vote will pass," she said after a moment. "Not because the Council wants it to, but because we have no choice. The Vex were but the first test of our galaxy's defenses, and we failed until you arrived." As night fell over Central Station, lights from thousands of ships created a false constellation. In offices throughout the diplomatic quarter, deals were made, alliances formed, and futures planned, all now revolving around human involvement. In a secure conference room, Admiral Stone, now gray-haired but no less commanding, addressed the human military leadership via quantum transmission from Earth. "Our position is stronger than anticipated at this stage," he reported. "The Guardian Species classification gives us legal authority to establish bases in previously restricted zones. Mineral rights on 42 worlds have been secured. The Mendari have offered their entire outer rim for colonization." President Wells nodded from Earth. "And the resistance bloc?" "Diminishing," Stone replied. "Their economies can't function without access to our shipping lanes." As the humans continued their strategic discussion, across the station the various species of the galaxy debated what the future held. Some saw humans as saviors, powerful protectors in a dangerous universe. Others whispered that the galaxy had traded one threat for another, perhaps more dangerous for its subtlety. Only one thing remained beyond debate. Every major power shift, every political crisis, every military development now had a single point of origin: Earth, the Deathworld that had given birth to the most formidable species the galaxy had ever known. The nightmare and the salvation had become one and the same.